Okay.
I'll just point this out.
Okay. Phil Corwin, and if we, and that what you just said, Andrew, is a great segue to the question I'm going to ask.
Anytime, man.
We didn't plan this. If we could fast forward 1 year, and we're meeting here, we'd be given at least a preliminary judgment on the program, and we probably base that on two things. One, minimizing harm, minimizing the name equations, minimizing infringement, minimizing uptake by scammers and spammers and other bad actors. But the other side is, has a market developed, has a vibrant market developed, and that's going to take marketing, because I think everyone said most people outside this room don't know that. So let me give you some examples. We got, right past this door, we have a room full of millennials who've grown up online, so anybody should know about it. They will, and they'll notice next year there's a .Nike, there's a .Google, but how do you reach them and convince them that there's some name they should want to register for their personal use or for their startup? John, you got .plumbing. How do you convince the guy who's got joesdcplumbing.com that he should want to spend extra money for an online presence at joesdc.plumbing, and how do you even get beyond that and convince him that it shouldn't be just a redirect to his existing .com website? And Andrew, all those folks in Nigeria who I suspect are mostly accessing the net on a mobile device or maybe going to an internet cafe once a week, how do you convince them that they have limited income, that they should shell out for one of these new TLDs? And then to add to the problem, however, or the challenge, however you market, any of you, you don't direct sell. They've got to go through a registrar. And the registrars may or may not carry the TLD you're marketing. You've got to have an agreement with them. And everything I know about marketing, which isn't that much, says that at a certain point, consumers don't like choice. At a certain point, they just get confused and defer to making a choice. And if they go to a big registrar like a GoDaddy and see a drop-down menu of hundreds of new general registration TLDs, they may feel overwhelmed about how do I pick the right one for what I want to do. So what's the marketing plan to make this, to get the kind of uptake that we would judge in a year as illustrating some degree of success?
Thank you. Me to go? Sure. Thanks, Phil. So providing more meaningful names is the key, and consumer awareness obviously is very important. So the most important thing is making sure consumers are aware of them, but once they are aware of them, the marketing of 2013 and before is not going to be the same as marketing going forward. It's going to be totally different. You're not going to see drop-down boxes, as you mentioned. You're going to see real-life, smart analysis by the registrars. If someone's putting in a name and a related field, then the TLDs that relate to what they do and what they're looking for will come up. So it's not going to be a drop-down box of 1,000 TLDs. That just doesn't make sense. You look at what Amazon does now in marketing. It's much different. They don't do a drop-down box with every one of their products, right? So when you could have a more meaningful name where the electricians and the attorneys and the doctors are not competing against the plumbers for .plumbing, you could get a much better name than you can get now, a much more meaningful name, and a name that they'll be happy to use in their own marketing. So I think you'll see that in a year, and we'll have this conversation a year from now, and you're going to say you were right.
Okay, so to your comment about the Nigerians, it's a good question. And the answer is that there's a lot more money in most emerging markets than people in the global north realize, right? Some 30–40% of the people in Latin America now would be what we would consider to be part of the global middle class. Africa's middle class is growing faster than any other part of the world. So it's not that they can't afford it. In fact, they can. The cost of living in a lot of these, Lagos is a perfect example. Cost of living in Lagos is crazy high, right? Kinshasa was, up until recently, the most expensive city in the world to live in. That's the capital of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. So it's not that people don't have money. They do. The question is two things in my mind. Number one is, are they online? And they are going online very, very quickly. And then the second thing is, is anybody talking to them? And that's really, in my mind, that's really the big issue. If we direct strategies at these markets, we'll be able to reach them. If we continue to act as if they don't exist, then we'll continue to pass them by. Somebody else will reach them eventually. I just think that this is a tremendous window because this is all happening at the same time, and frankly, because not everybody can simultaneously launch in Germany at the same time and get eyeballs. It just isn't possible, right? So I'm hoping that some groups are going to look at this and say, yeah, it makes sense for me to carve out a fast-growing niche in different places. And so we won't have across emerging markets a big win. We'll have pockets, and that's all you need to get the thing started, in my opinion.
Well, I just wanted to confirm the growth in Nigeria. We noticed they were offering an exciting new Verizon tablet in Nigeria, only we do not have a Verizon tablet. So I think that leads to my next segue, which is that we really need responsible marketing and increased best practices in these new TLDs. So for example, today you can go to a registrar like, for example, GoDaddy, and if you search for Verizon wireless with 3 S's, it will say, that domain name isn't available, but here are 50 variations. Well, that is, there's nothing on there telling the consumer that, this is cyber squatting and that there's liability attached to that. So we're hoping that the new marketing practices will be much more responsible. And the same goes for some of the new TLDs where issues of concern have been raised, like in .wtf, for example, what will prevent, teenagers from doing cyberbullying or some horrific mischief with that. So I'm hoping we're going to see not just widespread, but responsible marketing.
Good observations, and the business factors and the technical factors often have correspondences to each other. A good solution will address a full set of requirements. So if we look a year ahead, I'm optimistic that through ICANN's efforts with the report and study that's underway right now about name collisions, the workshop that FairWinds is organizing in the early part of the year, and other players at the table, we have a much better understanding of how to make a transition from a limited world of gTLDs to a more expansive one. And what are the implications throughout the ecosystem in that case? So if we could come back in a year and say, we understand the situation where it makes sense, things have gotten better, and in other cases, maybe there's more studying going on, but this is the year where that focus is going to occur.
Thanks. I just wanted to echo something that John said. I think he hit the nail on the head when he said that the marketing in 2014 is going to be very different than pre-2013 or before, by virtue of the number of organizations involved with the program, the type of organizations. It's not going to solely rest in the hands of a select few registrars to spread the word, to increase popularity, to educate people. It's going to rest in their hands. It's going to rest in corporations' hands. It's going to be all across the board. So I think it's not necessarily, sure, if we stuck to the traditional norm of how domains are marketed today, no one will get this a year from now. But again, I think John is 100% correct in that it's going to be a completely different landscape come a year from now, come 2 years from now.
Sure. Thanks. Are there any audience questions that I missed? If not, I'm going to ask a lightning round question to wrap it up. And that's just to ask each of the panelists to mention what you think or what has caught your attention as the most interesting new domain name insofar as a new service or a new business model. Be careful with that.
This is the bad one? In terms of new business models, I think that some of the community TLDs, some of the geographic TLDs, some of the brand TLDs, where there's already the ability to identify with something, whether it's be a brand or a community or a geographic TLD, I think that that's probably the most exciting area for me and for FairWinds. On the other hand, I think there are some, so I agree 100% with Sarah that there is going to be TLD fatigue. At one point, there are just going to be so many, and we're potentially just going to be diluting an already diluted space. If you look at e-commerce, there's going to be a .shop, a .shopping, a .store, a .deal, a .deals, a .coupon, a .coupons. It's not going to be possible for all of them to be successful necessarily. But when I look at kind of that open new TLD space, originally talking about niche TLDs that aren't going to be successful, we might say something like a .tattoo or a .ninja, and not necessarily throw them under the bus, but say, well, how can you possibly make a viable business model out of a .ninja? Then I started to think about it, actually, Taylor.Ninja or something like that could be kind of cool. So, we'll see.
Well, my focus is mostly on the technical topics, and VeriSign has customers and has applications of our own, so I'm reluctant to choose one phenomenon over another. But let me say, looking globally at the impact of the internet, one of the really fascinating applications is for .Africa. And this, again, aligns with the growth of the global south, the notion of an identity, and that the internet can transcend all kinds of things. It can unify in many different ways, can provide presence, provide voice, and so on. And these are the interesting intersections, both of the policy and the technology, the people and the practice.
I better take that one, Sarah, if you could use it.
Oh, okay. And yes, exactly. Just personally, I was just intrigued by many of the community applications, either communities that bind people from geographic regions or based on interests that they might have. I thought those are all going to be very fascinating to watch. And then there's a bunch on the list, if you look through them, that you just kind of chuckle and you think, like, Dot, what were you thinking? But we'll see.
Come on, name names.
Okay, so this is now my collection of microphones here. Well, first of all, I think you underestimate the power of the global ninja community. They are multitudes. You know, there may be some that are giggle like that, but I think a lot of them have to have some sort of they have to have some draw, because the truth of the matter is that most of the people who know that this program exists already have a website or a dozen websites, right? And that's one of the things. What's going to make it urgent? I like the idea of the communities. I love .Africa. We've worked with them since early on. Love the .NGO because it creates a space that really doesn't exist right now and allows people to get to their mission. You know, if you think about the idea of what you want to get accomplished, raising funds, finding partners, all that kind of stuff, if you can do it in a safe and secure place, that's a real contribution. That's one of the things that I'm interested in. Is I think that there are real contributions that can be made that are more than just making money or breaking even. One that nobody's mentioned, but I think is interesting also, is .gay. And that's partly interesting because I think it'll be an interesting thing to see how it plays out internationally, because it means different things in different parts of the world. How the governance regimes are put into place, because there are a lot of different ways you could structure that to make it work or fail, to make it helpful or less helpful. And in terms of the commercial ones, I'm looking for the people who are going to figure out a way to say, I have, you know, in addition to shop and coupon and all this, I'm going to do something different with a storefront, with a more of a generic storefront. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm interested to see.
Thank you.
It's for you.
Thanks. So, again, we've been talking about alignment, and I've been talking about alignment. I want every TLD to succeed. Not just ours. I'm saying VeriSign's and others, the ones that you mentioned, the IDNs, the community ones, certainly the geo ones. I think they'll all succeed, because you can provide more meaningful names to a public that has been artificially constrained in this market for years. So, you know, as far as the entire program, I think I'm looking for as many of them to do really well as possible. As far as ours, we like to say that we like all our children equally, so I'm not going to pick one.
Thank you all. That's going to conclude the event, and I'd like to ask for acknowledgement of three groups. First and foremost, the panel. Thank you for your thoughts, for your insights. Secondly, for the sponsors, FairWinds Partners and ISOC-DC, for putting this together. And thirdly, for the audience, for your time, for your attention, and your contributions. Thanks.
DC government, about to give me a ticket.
Oh, I'm sorry.
This is a bit of a fair one.
And to our moderator, thank you very much.